In this week's episode, we are exploring how you and I, as employees, bring value to our companies, starting with the job description and what's expected of us to do our job. It's more of a teaching and learning conversation about understanding roles and responsibilities.
Welcome to Ask HR, the podcast dedicated to being your trusted resource, answering HR questions while covering broader topics and people and culture with expert insights and practical solutions. I'm your host, Yusin Patil Young. Join me each week as we tackle your HR questions to help you navigate the day-to-day with real-world strategies, featuring special guests, sharing our stories, lessons, empowering each other, and learning from one another. Ask HR is proudly sponsored by YP Personnel Management and Consulting, a strategic, tactical, and practical HR solutions consulting firm. We are your resources at work. Let's get started.
This episode is actually inspired by a recent conversation, an interview with Tezlyn Figaro. She's a political strategist, and she was discussing her Push the Line training program. I was especially drawn to how clearly she broke down the difference between role and responsibility. Of course, it sparked a follow-up conversation with my team, one where we found ourselves asking, did we truly understand the difference between role and responsibility earlier in our career? And what can we share with you today to pay it forward? And so that simple reflection led to more conversations, prompting us to revisit and try to reevaluate what we remember. Here's a summary of what we use to guide our conversation. What is the difference between roles and responsibility? Is there a difference? We're going to break it down as simple as we can. Disclaimer, this is not an ultimate guide on every difference between role and responsibility, but rather what we know now versus then. From the job description, the role outlined the scope of the work and the main function of the position, which represents the why, which is the purpose of your position. The responsibilities define the specific task, the deliverables, and that represents the what we do regularly to fulfill the job in the role. So a little backstory. Earlier in my career, I often felt I was doing a lot, but I wasn't sure I was doing it right all the time, and still have some moments. But at the time, I didn't really understand the difference between role and responsibility, nor did I knew there was a difference. I knew the why behind my job and some of the things that I was accountable for. And since I knew that much, it gave me direction. But still back then, there wasn't a solid understanding to the measurable criterias and what I was to be evaluated on. And even my colleague admitted, thinking back, they could not even articulate some of the things in their job description. So fast forward to today, we know and understand better that the role represents the why, the purpose of the position, while responsibilities represent the what, which are the key actions to get the job done. And before we dive in,
This episode of Ask HR is brought to you by YP Personnel Management and Consulting, referred as YPPMC. We are your resources at work. With a collective of 20 years of experience amongst our consultants, YPPMC brings the strategies, the solutions, and the expertise to simplify your HR services. Whether you are a small organization, an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, or a growing business, because when HR works, your business thrives. Learn more at yppmc.com.
moving on. So there is a difference in roles and responsibility. And these differences are important because it helps us you and I to know exactly what is expected of us. And this clarity can prevent a lot of confusion, burnout, making it easier for us to manage our work and stay a little bit more motivated. Because when we are clear, it creates ownership, and we are more effective when we know what we're supposed to be doing. Here's a practical framework with a little bit more clarity using the RESPIN framework to look at the job descriptions in 4 parts: the definition, the scope, the focus, and importance. So from the job description, starting with the why, which is the role. This is your guiding star, your reason for being in the position. It includes the reporting structure, who you report to, and who you support, and it is connected to both the value that you bring to the company and the value that the company needs from you. So in the definition, we're going to use a teacher position. In the definition section, it's what you are supposed to be in the job: a teacher. The scope is the overall position or title you hold. As a teacher, you are responsible for educating students. For the focus, it focuses on your identity in the job, and that is you are seen as an educator and a mentor. For importance, it helps you to understand your place in the organization, but it's also knowing you are a teacher. You understand the role in the school and how you contribute to the students' learning. Once we are clear on why your role exists, the next step is understanding what you're expected to deliver and how. And this is where responsibility comes into focus. Now, let's take a moment to acknowledge our sponsor.
Let's learn more about our sponsor, YP Personnel Management and Consulting. At YPPMC, we're not just about advice. Whether you need strategic HR planning, tactical execution, or practical day-to-day support, we've got you covered. Elevate your business with client-focused, responsive, ethical, and result-driven HR solutions. Visit yppmc.com and learn how we can be of help. We are your resources at work.
For the what, responsibilities are the core task and how success is measured. That includes the criteria that you're going to be evaluated on for the job. That is exactly what you're expected to do. Think of your day-to-day duties, your tasks, and the outcomes if there are any key performance indicators. So using the RESPIN framework still, the definition, the scope, the focus, and the importance. Still looking at the teacher position, the definition and the what is, what are you supposed to do in the job? Teaching students. The scope, the specific tasks or duties you need to complete. Preparing lessons, plans, grading assignments, and conducting class. Where the focus is focusing on your actions and your task. It's the daily activities, including the teaching, the assessing student progress, the classroom management, and providing feedback. And for the importance, it's to help you understand what you need to do every day. Knowing your responsibilities ensures that you complete your task more effectively and you're contributing to the student's education. So I hope using the RESPIN framework with the definition, the scope, the focus, and the importance was a little bit more of a context and understanding the difference. But to provide you with some additional guidance, here are 2 main best practices that we learned from the Society of Human Resources Management, SHRM, on understanding the job description, the what and the how. The first one is you want to ensure your job description reflects the company's mission or values or vision. How you do that is you identify how the role contributes to the overall organization, and you look at your job description to see where there are alignment. The second thing is looking specifically at the knowledge, the abilities, and the competencies. These are the skills needed for your success. So what you're going to do is you're going to list all of the skills that you know you're great at. And you're going to identify those essential competencies needed to succeed in your job. So you look at your job descriptions and you compare, and you look at things like communication skills. How often are you going to communicate? Are you leading a team, which is also part of the leadership abilities? Are you supporting a large team, or will you be leading a team and managing people? And then we also look at technical expertise, other specific areas in hardware and software that you'll need to know or that the job requires in order for you to succeed. These are just the top 2, but learn more at sherm.org on more best practices and understanding or learning more about the job description style, the format, and so forth.
And before we wrapped up our episode, thank you to our sponsor, YP Personnel Management and Consulting. YPPMC goes beyond the traditional HR consulting by offering a comprehensive suite of HR services and compliance, HR technology, leadership and development, and more. These services collectively support your HR operations. Visit yppmc.com and book your free consultation today. We are your resources at work.
To recap, remember, clarity is the first step towards growth. I mentioned before that growth, personal development, is an ongoing journey that requires active participation and contribution effort on both you and the company's part. So the role is your why. The responsibilities is your how. When you understand both, you and I as employees, we work smarter, not so much harder. If your role and responsibilities still feels unclear, why not have a conversation with your manager? And remember, HR is also here to support and provide additional clarity. So, dear employees, ask questions, review your job description, and try to connect the dots between your responsibility and the value you bring. When you understand your purpose and deliverables, you're empowered to contribute better and you grow with intention. If this information is helpful to you, go back and think about what aspect of your role today could you use more clarity to help you do better and excel in your current position. And that wraps up this week's Ask HR. But tune in next week for our people leaders discussion on the job description and setting it up and structuring it to drive performance and accountability. In the meantime, have an HR question. Submit your questions for the show to askhr@yppmc.com. Watch the full video on Spotify, YouTube, or listen on your favorite podcast platform. We so appreciate you for tuning in. Continue to support the show by subscribing, following, and engaging with us.